ladies and gentlemen. It's the one and only Dog Waters, James Williams, and I'm back talking a little bit faster than I want to. Let me try and rewind and slow it down. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's the one and only Dog Waters, James Williams. That sounds terrible. Anyway, guys, I'm here, back with another exciting episode, and we're still talking about cryptids and monsters and Bigfoot. And I have a special guest with me tonight. But before we get to that guest, I want to make sure that you're listening to this. If you're paying attention and you don't know that the IamDogWaters.com membership is open, it's open. You need to become a member. Why? Because we're getting ready to start rolling out some phenomenal content. Now, if you're an older member who's been around, you haven't went through the process of resetting your password, reset your password. Today is Wednesday. Today was a day of fasting and prayer, so I didn't do any work. Tonight, you guys will see all those passwords will be reset. So, if you want in, send that email. If you don't, when I start rolling it out, don't be calling and texting, emailing, acting crazy, because I've given it over 2 weeks to get this squared away. All right, now, with that being said, I'm joined by Lija Fisher. Now, I'm going to tell you guys, her name is, she has a silent J in her name, and I've never met anyone with a silent J, but she's a sweetheart. Lija, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing just wonderful. Thanks so much for having me on.
I am happy to have you on. The one thing that I pride myself on in this field is that there's so much competition in the Bigfoot cryptid field that nobody's just like, hey, let's just talk and let's all hang out and let's figure out what we got in common and let's see what we can learn from each other. Everybody's like, oh, this is my research, this is my area, this is my book, this is my conference. I'm like, man, you guys act like a bunch of little children. And so I just pride myself on hanging out with everyone, trying to get to know everyone, seeing what I can do to help others, and that's why we are here. So, with that being said, Lija, I gotta run you through the ringer real quick. I have said over and over and over on these interviews, I don't like asking people like, did you have an encounter? Like just standard run-of-the-mill questions. What I like to do is try and collect data from every show, every interviewer to figure out how many people got introduced to this topic as a kid, whether it be by an encounter as a kid or by a family member as a friend or based on being in the woods, versus people who got introduced to it as an adult. Where do you fall in that whole scale? Was this something you were interested in as a child, or was it something that you kind of came into in adulthood?
I did not get interested in cryptozoology until I was an adult. When I was a kid, I was definitely into mythology. I grew up in the mountains, and as a kid, I would always go out and pretend to look for fairies and gnomes and dwarves. So I definitely had a knowledge of mythology and myths, but it wasn't until I became an adult that I started researching Bigfoot and other cryptids, and it opened up this entire world of cryptozoology that I thought I would have loved this as a kid. And as an adult, it just got me so excited to be able to dive into a similar yet different field.
I agree with you. And when we get to this phase, it's like if you imagine like a 2-lane highway, right? And then like there's one lane goes far to the left, the other lane goes far to the right. It's kind of like in the field, for whatever reason, people don't respect the divergence. So, for example, there are people who learn about this topic and they learn about it from being a field investigator, like they're out in the field and they're studying. Then there's other people who learn about it from a purely academic standpoint. They start reading and researching as many books as they can, and they start collecting their body of knowledge. Which route did you go? Were you like into the book studying it, like reading magazines, or did you spend time in the field? How did it all play out for you?
Yeah, I definitely started just reading books on it because, I started researching well, actually, the first cryptid I researched was the Otter Man. And I got into the Otter Man due to an article about Charlie Sheen, the actor, many years ago, where this newspaper article said that Charlie Sheen was putting together a hunting party to go to Alaska to find the Otter Man. And I thought, what is the Otter Man, and what does Charlie Sheen want with him? And so I started researching the Otter Man, and
Uh-huh.
it said the Otter Man is a cryptid. And I thought, well, what's a cryptid? And so I just started researching it, definitely more reading books, getting Lauren Coleman's Cryptozoology A to Z. And then eventually I got a job at the Sasquatch Outpost, which is Colorado's only Bigfoot museum. And as part of my job training, I would have to go out into the field and do overnight camping trips looking for Bigfoot in the Rocky Mountains. So I have as well done some field investigations.
Wait, so you got paid to go look for Bigfoot?
I got paid to go look for Bigfoot. Best job ever.
I'm telling you, guess what? I'm gonna tell y'all right now. Leah has trumped all of y'all out here in these streets. She's the only person I know who got a job and got paid to go look for Bigfoot. Everybody talking about they're a researcher. I'm a researcher. You ain't getting paid to go do it. So, yeah, you trump
Dreams do
everybody.
come true.
All right, so we get to that point where you not only have you worked at a museum or a place where they pretty much have all documentation, and then you're out in the field doing research. What happens for you next? How did you get to the children's book part?
Yeah, so once I started researching cryptids, I was getting into writing a little bit. At the time, I was an actor living in New York City. And for me, being an actor meant that I sat around waiting for the phone to ring for someone to offer me a job, which didn't happen that much. So I thought, well, while I'm sitting here waiting for acting work, maybe I'll try to write something because I have plenty of time on my hands and I wanted to be creative. And it was around that time that I read that newspaper article about the otter man. And I started diving into cryptozoology and learning more about it. And I thought, this would be a great topic for kids to learn about, a really fun adventure novel this would make. And so I just tried my hand at writing a children's adventure novel about kids' search for cryptids or legendary animals that might be real, as I call them. And I was just very fortunate to get a book deal out of it.
That's awesome. I'm gonna share a secret between just you and me. Like my one of my lifelong goals is to be in a sci-fi movie. I want to be like I don't care if I'm like the security guard that's outside the gate where the aliens coming in and they kill me. I don't have to be like I don't have to be a hero. I just want to be in some type of sci-fi movie where it's on the sci-fi channel. I would love to be like Billy Badass and blow something up, but hey, I could just be like a soldier. That's my lifelong dream is to be only in a sci-fi movie. I don't care about anything else. I don't care about any other TV stations. But if I can get that, I'll be a happy camper.
Well, and getting to do a death scene would be pretty intense. Like, you really got to sell the death scene if you're in a sci fi movie. And I think you'd be great at it.
Oh, I'm real dramatic. I can be super dramatic if I need to be. Yeah, I can be full of drama if I need to be. But I think it'll be cool for me, and I think it'll be awesome. All right, so we get our books published. We get the children's books published. And then you got to the point to where you started really teaching people from the beginning, like things about cryptozoology. Um, how's that's been going? I know that you go to different conferences, you make presentations. Kind of walk us through some of the things you touch on in those presentations.
Yeah, so my books are for 8 to 13-year-olds. And so I get invited to schools, libraries, and Bigfoot conferences to teach kids about the search for legendary animals. And what I do is I'm not trying to teach them that Bigfoot is real. I am trying to teach them about if we were to prove that Bigfoot and other cryptids are real, how would we do that? And we would do that through the scientific method. So, one thing that I do is I get kids excited about going into nature, going into the wilderness to look for legendary animals because I believe that it teaches them about science in a really fun, accessible way. And then I also teach them about myths and legends and how it teaches us about the cultures that we live in. And then I teach them about cryptids that we have found. A lot of people believe that cryptids are, animals of myth, legend, and imagination that we just talk about but have never been discovered. When really there have been many animals that used to be considered legend until we actually discovered them. And so I talk a lot of stuff for kids because I think getting them involved in cryptozoology is just a super fun way to learn about so many different things.
There's a lot of adults that need to be trained like those kids too, as far as the scientific method. Um, like I was saying before in the pre-interview, because there's no standardization in how we really assess information. it seems as if there's always this conflict amongst people. Like literally, there's always a conflict amongst researchers and authors, and I call them like journalists. Those are people who only comment on evidence. There's always these conflicts because we don't have a standardized system, and the scientific method is the method you should go about when you're doing research. So I'm happy you wrote the book. Have you written anything for adults like that to get some of these adults on the right page?
No, I haven't. I've been one book that I've been working on that I'm trying to get published at the moment would actually be a field guide for how parents and kids can go into nature and look for Bigfoot themselves as a parent kid activity together. So hopefully, maybe someday I can get a publishing deal for that one.
Do you ever get any pushback from people about the kids going into the woods looking for them? Anybody ever like trying to jump down your throat and be like, "It's
Oh,
dangerous for these kids to be out here looking for the Bigfoots"?
more what I've gotten pushback from is I've talked to friends who are scientists, and I talk about the notion of using Bigfoot to get kids interested in science. And I have gotten pushback that I shouldn't be using something that doesn't exist to teach kids about science. And I understand that take if someone's like, Bigfoot definitely doesn't exist. But my whole point is, but hey, we're making a hypothesis. The hypothesis is that Bigfoot exists. So, how do you go about proving that? And that's what science is. A lot of times when we have a hypothesis, we don't know if it's true or not. That's what a hypothesis is. It's something you're trying to prove. And so I understand the pushback of don't use Bigfoot, but when I was a kid, if someone used Bigfoot to teach me the scientific method, I think I would have been really into it. So,
Absolutely. For a kid, it needs to be something fun and something enjoyable to kind of teach them what they need to learn. I find it real funny that we live in a society right now where people don't know what a man is and what a woman is, but then they want to sit here and tell us that Bigfoot is not possible, that Bigfoot exists. You can't tell me biologically what a man is or what a woman is, and then at the same time you want to turn around and tell me, oh, Bigfoot doesn't exist. Dude, something's wrong with you, and something's wrong with your brain. And so I tell you what, there's a lot of evidence that Bigfoot exists. There's a lot of evidence that cryptids in general exist that people speak and talk about. I think to a certain extent, I know to a certain extent when you deal with the scientific community, this is going to sound harsh, but it's like nerds going through peer pressure, and it's like it's the worst thing on the planet. So you got all these nerdy, geeky guys, and then there's peer pressure amongst each other and bullying amongst each other. So it makes it hard for me to even take a lot of them serious. And I've spoken to a lot of them. I mean, a whole lot of them in interviews, and they will sit there and look at a piece of evidence that you can clearly see a face, a nose, eyes, lips. I'm talking about shoulders, and they'll say, "Oh, that's too blurry." I'm like, "My God, you know what? I'm done talking to you, bro. I'm absolutely done talking to you because you just I don't think there'd be anything that would prove it to you. If I brought it to your house and set it on your front porch, that wouldn't be sufficient for you. Anyway, there I go ranting again and raving again. All right,
or
so
the notion that there shouldn't be imagination in science. Even Einstein talked about how one of the most important things that helped his, mathematical scientific brain was his ability to have an imagination. And so to use Bigfoot as a symbol of having an imagination for what could be as a means to teach science, I think is really important.
no, I think it's really important. And then when you look at society as a whole and how literally the educational systems across the world, um, it's being dumbed down to where kids aren't even interested in being educated. They're more interested in their cell phone. They're more interested in Instagram and Twitter and all the rest of this TikTok. I mean, anything that can garner a child's attention to teach them is perfect. I wish there was a way to use Bigfoot and Dogman to teach them, algebra. It would be fantastic. Anything that would get a child's attention or a young man or woman's attention, I think is absolutely phenomenal. And I admire what you're doing. Um, I just figured you had ran into some people in the community because there's some hardcore starch researchers who will say, "Oh, if you bring a kid out, it's dangerous," but you're looking at it from a scientific standpoint, and that's awesome sauce. All right, let's move on to the next thing. When you were out getting paid, by the way, let's reiterate the fact that she was getting paid to look for Bigfoot. Did you have anything strange or weird happen that you want to share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went out a couple of nights with a small group. And what was interesting is the first night, somebody in the group had not night vision, but actual a heat signature application on their iPhone. And so they were able to hold up their phone and scan the dark forest in front of us. And we would see heat signatures on the tree trunks as if not necessarily, it wasn't as well defined as to be a handprint, but there was definitely heat signatures on the trunks of trees. And and then two other experiences, the folks who I went out with definitely believe that there is more to Bigfoot than just seeing Bigfoot. Um, we actually did a meditation on our way out to look for Bigfoot to open all of our senses. And they said, try not to just look for him in the dark. Open all of your senses to see if you can hear him, smell him, even somewhat feel his presence, if you will. And throughout the entire night, I was pretty nervous because I'd never gone wandering through that deep of the Rocky Mountains at night. And at one point, just this immense calm came over me, and I felt totally at peace and totally comfortable. And somebody next to me said, "Do you feel that?" And I said, "I do. I feel really calm and peaceful and safe." And they said, "I think Bigfoot is walking beside us here in the forest." And I was like, "Really?" And at that moment, somebody grabbed a pine cone and they said, "Hey, Bigfoot, I'm going to throw this to you. Please throw it back to us." And they threw the pine cone into the forest. And it sounded like someone picked up a huge boulder and just crashed it through the trees. It was a sound that I had no idea what could have possibly made that sound except somebody picking up a boulder and throwing it through the trees that were there. So I didn't have any specific sighting of Bigfoot, but I did have, interesting sounds around me, interesting feelings around me, that made me think, huh, maybe there is something out here.
Oh, I trust me. I know. I've talked to the Dark Waters brand was built on talking to eyewitnesses about their encounters, and most people
Mhm.
believe that in order for an encounter to be valid, it needs to be validated by eyesight, by seeing something. But some of the most important information you can glean from encounters is what people hear, what people smell, and even so much as what people taste. Because as you smell something, when it comes to their scent is so strong that you actually begin to taste it in your mouth. And so, unfortunately, I think they put the right emphasis on eyewitness sightings with their eyeballs, but I think they underestimate the value of the other encounters that people are having out there in the woods. Take me back to
Right.
your time in the museum and walk me through some of the things about the museum because I think I've heard about this museum before. Who's that owned by? Is that owned by a nonprofit or an
No,
individual?
so it's the Sasquatch Outpost in Bailey, Colorado, and it's owned by Jim and Daphne Myers. And they are really true Bigfoot believers. Jim is a huge researcher, uh, big believer in Bigfoot, and he opened up this gift shop and museum. And when people show up, they think it's going to be, a cute, kitschy thing, but it is really a serious collection of the history of Bigfoot, different legends about him. We have, of course, the footprint casts. We have different videos that talk about eyewitness sightings. We have evidence of up in the Colorado Rockies, a lot of people bring their horses up and they'll come out in the morning and the horses' manes are braided. So we have evidence of manes being braided. We have different Bigfoot sounds that have been recorded. And then we have the boss, which is about a 9-foot animatronic Bigfoot display, which is
Oh,
quite spectacular.
I got to see that. I got to see that in person. That's probably amazing. to stand
It's
next to something like
amazing.
that. I saw someone down here in New Orleans it has to be at least a 10 foot tall animated Rougarou in their front lawn for Halloween, and the arms move up and down and the head moves left to right. I was like, yo, that's terrifying. I mean, that's absolutely terrifying. Um,
And one of the best things about working at the outpost is all of the eyewitness accounts that people come in and tell me. If you're not a believer, at least in the strong possibility that Bigfoot could exist, you really will be a believer if you work at the outpost long enough, just by the sheer number of people who come in and tell me their stories. It's really amazing how many eyewitness accounts there are just from people coming through the outpost.
I can believe it. Think about it. It's a whole business model set up on people who have an interest in the subject. And if you're coming in the door of that building or that business, then you've had some kind of encounter or you have some kind of knowledge of it. So I can guarantee it's probably hundreds of thousands of encounters that'll come through those doors. Probably some terrifying stuff and some funny stuff. Can you recall any of the more lighter encounters, things that were entertaining as opposed to terrifying?
Oh yeah, I have a lot of people who come in and tell me their encounters when they were kids, and they're now adults, and they come in and they're like, "Yeah, I was out fishing with my dad." The most recent account I got was a gentleman came in. He was probably in his 40s, and he said, "Yeah, when I was about 10 years old, I was fishing with my dad, and we looked towards shore and we saw something crouched down, cupping water into its mouth. And all of a sudden, it stood up and it was about 8 feet tall, dark, completely covered in dark hair. And it just stood there watching them for a good few minutes. And then it just ran off into the woods. And I've heard many people come in and tell me their experiences when they were kids. And they're like, yeah, of course, to this day, I'm a believer because when I was a kid, I did see Bigfoot 100%.
That is, and that's one of the things why I like to touch on where the person first got their interest in the subject. You would be amazed at how many eyewitnesses had their encounters between ages 5 and 12 years old. It's
Hmm.
insane. It's like, especially when it comes to Bigfoot. It comes to Dogman, the data's all scattered all over the place. But when it comes to Bigfoot, it's in that age range. It's almost as if they have a liking to, and it's not really aggressive. It's just showing themselves, peeking around trees. But it's nothing like too terrifying
Right,
for those
right.
people.
And I had one gentleman come in, and he was a gentleman about in his 60s. And he kind of walked in and he's looking around very hesitantly. And I'm like, can I help you? And he said, I just got back from Russia and I saw something that I can't explain. And my friends told me that I needed to come here. And I was like, well, what did you see? And he pointed on the wall to a drawn picture of Bigfoot. And he goes, I saw that. And I said, so you saw Bigfoot in Russia? And he goes, but I don't believe in Bigfoot, but that is exactly what I saw. And it was so interesting because this is someone who didn't believe in Bigfoot, didn't want to believe in Bigfoot, yet he could not deny what his own eyes saw when he was in Russia. So that was a really interesting account because then it's like, I know this person isn't lying. I know that he's telling the truth because he doesn't want to believe what he saw.
And he's going through the process of trying to digest what he saw and come to terms with what he saw. So his whole context has been shattered. His whole mental context of how the world works has been uprooted. That's insane that you would be around to experience that. Have you ever walked somebody through that whole process where they just came in, I mean, completely bewildered and got them to a point where they were comfortable? How did you deal with that when somebody came in and they just like had a meltdown? Did you ever experience that?
That gentleman was probably the the person who I talked to who was the most. Oh no, actually, there was someone that I spoke to. This was at the Texas Bigfoot conference a couple years ago. And this was a family who did not believe in Bigfoot. And yet they had a Bigfoot encounter where Bigfoot actually came up and pressed his face and hands against their glass door. And they actually brought the glass door in so we could see the face print. And I was talking to the wife, and I mean, she was just white as a ghost. And she was like, I don't know what I'm doing here at this Bigfoot conference. I don't believe in Bigfoot, but something came up and was 7, 8 feet tall and pressed its face against my door. And then after that, I did my presentation on cryptozoology about how it's possible that there are these animals of legend still out there that we haven't discovered. And she said that it actually gave her a sense of peace that this might not have been a monster, but that it truly is just an unknown, potential undiscovered ape species in North America that we just haven't discovered yet.
Yeah, I mean, if it's walking up pressing his face on my window, man, I'm gonna be real with you. I don't know how I would handle that because I've talked to witnesses who've seen that and been completely and utterly terrified to the point to where they've injured themselves trying to get away. And if I'm around with my kids and something like that happens, I just don't know what I would do. Honestly, I'm not even gonna speculate. I haven't been in that situation. I just
Yeah.
don't know how I would handle it. You know, that's terrifying. I don't care what. And they kept the glass. I mean, they literally kept the glass and brought it in.
Oh, yeah, they brought the door in so that we could all get, all look at the face print. And I mean, you can see, a nose, nostrils, the eye socket, and the researchers there, they were taking it away to see if they could get some kind of DNA swab from it. And I don't know what the results of that were, but I do know that they were going to try to get some actual DNA from it.
Well, you know somebody telling the truth when they got the nerve to bring a whole damn door to you. They saw something. You know what I'm saying? Ain't nobody sitting around here playing hoax and bringing doors to people to Bigfoot conferences. That's
Right.
that's wild, man. I've never been to a Bigfoot conference. I'm thinking about going to one. Um, I just don't know what to expect when you go to those kind of conferences. Don't you have some conferences coming up that you're going to be at?
I do. Yeah. In a couple of weeks here, I'm going to be at the Southwest Virginia Bigfoot and Friends. And that is on Saturday, September 24th. And that is near Roanoke, Virginia. And I will be giving a talk on introduction to cryptozoology. So I'm going to set up the day teaching people basically about what cryptids are, how we have found cryptids, how they are not just animals of myth. And then I will be followed by many other wonderful speakers. Lyle Blackburn, who is from Texas, who I know very well. He does great talks on so many different cryptids. Then there's a woman who I've never met, Katie Elizabeth, and she does research with her boat, I believe, for the lake monster Champ. So she's a big sea lake monster researcher. And so it's going to be a really fun day of listening to some great researchers talking about what they've seen, what they've discovered. And then, of course, we'll have a cryptid costume contest for the kids.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. That sounds really, really awesome. I know Lyle does a lot of stuff. I've seen him on. I've seen him everywhere. That guy does a lot of stuff, and he has a. I think he has a number of books written. He's like a cryptid superstar. That's cool that he's going to be there. Um,
Yeah.
what is it? What is it typically like for you when you go to those events? I mean, do you ever find yourself like being surprised at the questions that people ask you? Um, what is it like for you? I mean, and I'm asking this from one creator to another because I'm thinking about. I've had people reach out to me to come to those, and I'd be like, nah, I'm not interested. But I'm just trying to figure out what is the experience like for you? Is it
Oh,
rewarding?
they're so fun. I've spoken at several different Bigfoot conferences now, and probably the thing I enjoy the most is, as people call it, bar con. Going to the bar at the end of the night and just talking with the other researchers and hearing their thoughts on things, asking them questions, sharing our information. At the International Cryptozoology Conference a couple years ago, I I was walking through the bar after the conference, and somebody said, "Hey, Leah, do you want to come over here and hear about my sea serpent research?" And I was like, "Do I ever?" And it was about a guy who had taken every sea serpent sighting report, and he had basically laid it out in like a spreadsheet, and he had all these different um, things that he was exploring. You know, what time of day was it? Where was it? Was it freshwater? Was it seawater? Was it stormy? What was the weather like? And he had just tracked all of these different reports of sea monsters to try to find a commonality and understand the data. I mean, it's just absolutely fascinating when you go to these and talk to fellow citizen scientists who are out in the field doing research trying to find these legendary animals.
Have you ever seen anybody come to those conferences? I wouldn't call them troublemakers, but like, have you ever got a sense when you were at a conference like you guys were being watched or somebody was spying on you? Not somebody overtly like coming in like you guys are frauds, you're liars, man. I'm talking about somebody that just seemed like they were out of place. Because I've talked to people who've done these conferences, and they've said they've seen the same guy at multiple conferences. And he's always been shady. He's always been recording everything everybody says. I'm just running that by you to see if there's any kind of government conspiracy. Have you ever sensed anything like that?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, no, I've never sensed anything like that at all. Um, I've always just felt very welcomed in those situations with people who are just genuinely curious and open to this field, and even spoken to people who have had encounters that they haven't understood, and they're trying to find basically a community of people who welcome them after having this bizarre encounter. So yeah, I haven't witnessed anything shady, but now that you've mentioned it, I'm going to keep my eye out.
Yeah, I think you should keep one eye peeled, and I'm dead serious because it's. I'm not even gonna talk about it anymore. We just leave it. Just keep your eye peeled out for anything
Okay.
weird and shisty. The word I'm looking for is shysters. Look out for the shisty people. Um, all right, so now let's circle back. I want to talk about probably what's the worst encounter that you've had or you've spoken to someone about from that museum? Was it that one with the face on the glass, or was there something different?
Probably the scariest encounter that somebody remembered. It wasn't necessarily the encounter that was scary for them, but it was the reaction of their parent who they were with. This was a gentleman who came in, and he said that he was in Florida with his father growing up. And in Florida, you know, as you know, they call Bigfoot the skunk ape because it stinks. And he said that he was out in the woods camping with his dad. And he said that his dad was just a really strong, stoic, you know, a manly man who wouldn't get scared or flustered very easily. And he said they were setting up their tent for the night, and all of a sudden, this stench overwhelmed them. Just this awful smell. And he said he looked at his dad, and his dad was white as a sheet, and just looked at his son, and he said, "We're going now." And
Wow.
immediately packed up their tent, packed up their campsite, drove away from there. They never returned, and his dad never talked about it. And so, again, they didn't have an actual encounter, but he was like, something scared my dad that night, and my dad never gets scared. So that was really interesting.
Yeah, that's an encounter. That's the thing. The thing to me is again going back to standardization. Like as far as not allowing things to be disputed and disputing things, to me, and this is just me, anytime you're out and you have something, a sight, a sound, a smell, even if it's a rumbling and it's associated with an area where there's Bigfoot, it should be classified as a type of encounter, right? Especially if you know Bigfoot's in the area. Um, Now, of course, you can discount that encounter. Let's see you see a footprint, right? And you should know that that's a deer print versus a Bigfoot print. But if you and I are out camping and we go in the tent, we watching Netflix, and we hear something growling, and the vinyl on the tent is shaking. Ain't nothing out there in the woods that's gonna do that except for maybe a bear. But okay, so we having an encounter with something, and then the idea is how do you verify what it is that you're having the encounter with? Again, that's been
Right.
my issue with the field. Is it's we just need to define encounters as encounters, and then sit them through this method of vetting to figure out what it was an encounter with. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I should have said they did have an encounter. Yeah, I think when I think encounter, I'm like, oh, Bigfoot came up and shook their hands. But you're absolutely right. An encounter can be that you just have something involving all of one of your five senses besides just seeing or touching. It can be smelling or hearing. No, you're absolutely right with that.
Yeah, and what I love about hearing people's encounters is like that dynamic between father and son. You see, there's things that people miss because they only focus on, well, was it Bigfoot or not? They never capture the essence of the moment that the son realized that his father, who was a man that wasn't afraid of anything, found something that he was afraid of, and how significant that was for that child, and how significant it was for that person as they become a young adult and become an adult. Nobody touches on that. They only focus on, oh, you smelled something, or did you smell something? Did you see something? But those are the things that really, once you capture the essence of that, you really understand the whole totality of what a true encounter with a cryptid is. Because that same little data extracted about the father-son relationship can be extrapolated over a number of Bigfoot encounters and Dogman encounters. It's a feeling that's associated with having that encounter. And then you can verify the validity of people's encounters based on the consistency of the results of the feelings that people have had. So this guy's dad had an encounter with him. His dad freaked out, packed up everything, and left. This other guy's dad had an encounter, and it was so terrifying, they left everything, right? But nobody
Right.
really focuses on the witness, so therefore they don't get the real data, and they can't just they find it hard to validate encounters because all of the validation is based on, I smelled it, I saw it, I heard it. They don't factor in the actual witness, their emotions, the aftermath. They never fact. Okay, I'm on the freaking. I'm sorry, guys. I'm on the damn soapbox again. See, Leah, I told you I was gonna catch myself, but I'm just so serious. Like nobody factors it in, and it's absolutely disgusting to me. Nobody factors it in. All right, we're running up on our time limit here, so let's do this. Walk us through where we can find your content. Where can we buy your books? Where can we go to see you at a conference and any other conferences you have later on down the road that you want people to know about?
Yeah, absolutely. So my books, the first book is called The Cryptid Catcher, and the second book is called The Cryptid Keeper. And you should be able to buy them wherever books are sold, um, or Amazon, although I usually try to encourage people to support their local bookshop, to shop local and support those indie family run businesses. Uh, and and again, they are adventure novels for about 8 to 13-year-olds. And again, you can see me Saturday, September 24th at the Southwest Virginia Bigfoot and Friends Conference. Then I will also be in Denver, Colorado at Mile High Con, which is a fantasy and science fiction convention. And that will be Friday through Sunday, October 21st through 23rd. And then I will also be doing a couple of holiday book signings. If you are in Colorado, I will be also at the Colorado Convention Center Saturday, November 12th for the holiday booth there. And then I will also be in Colorado in Georgetown, which is just a little adorable mountain town. I will be signing books at the Georgetown Book Nook Saturday, December 3rd and Saturday, December 10th.
Man, you are going to be busy, little lady.
I am busy.
That is a phenomenal thing. I love hearing that. Again, before I let Leah go, I want to reiterate. Wait, do you have social media? How do they get in contact with you? Do you have
Oh yeah,
YouTube?
you
What's your
can
website?
yeah, you can find me on my website, which is liafisher.com, and my first name is spelled with that silent J. It's LIJAFISHER.com. Or you can find me on Instagram at cryptidcatcher.
Gotcha. And explain to everybody why that J is silent. Tell them about where you're from so they'll understand the silent J. Because if I use my first name with a silent J, it would be Ames Williams. But tell everybody about the silent J and why your J is silent. I just want them to know because it's cute.
Yeah, my mom was born in Latvia, which is one of the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. And so they have silent J's over there. And so she named me Leah with a J.
All right. I didn't want y'all thinking she crazy and be like, there's no such thing as a silent J, because y'all know how y'all can act. Y'all can be like, she don't know what the hell she talking about. I'm like, yo, bro, it's her name. She know how her name is pronounced. Like, what is wrong with y'all? All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here. It's the one and only Dog Waters. I hope you enjoyed this interview. I enjoyed hanging out with Leah. She's cool. And we'll be back later. Peace out.